Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Tonight we're diving headfirst into ancient history. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. We're talking about the first temple in Jerusalem. Built by King Solomon, it was basically the blinged out religious HQ. Think Vegas, but with fewer Elvis impersonators and more prophets. This temple was a big deal. We're talking Super Bowl level importance for the Jewish people. It was the place to be for sacrifices, celebrations, and basically any religious excuse to party. This wasn't just some hastily built shack either. This was a masterpiece, decked out with gold, cedarwood, and enough precious stones to make a Kardashian jealous. It housed the Ark of the Covenant, which, if Indiana Jones taught us anything, is something you don't want to mess with. The first temple was more than just a building. It was the heart and soul of the Jewish faith, a symbol of their covenant with God, and a reminder of their unique place in the world. For about 400 years, the first temple stood tall, witnessing feasts, festivals, and the occasional prophetic rant. It was like the ultimate historical reality show, filled with drama, intrigue, and enough plot twists to make your head spin. But like any good drama, it couldn't last forever. The first temple's story is one of faith, destruction, and the enduring spirit of a people who refused to be defined by tragedy. It's a story that reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable loss, hope, faith, and a good bagel can get you through anything. So, grab your snack, settle in, and let's uncover the epic tale of the first temple's fall and the legacy it left behind. Section 2, the kingdom splits. Not a clean break. Now, after Solomon kicked the bucket, things went downhill faster than a greased chariot. His son, Rehoboam, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly winning any most popular king awards. Think of a leader who combines the economic acumen of a toddler with the diplomacy skills of a raging bull in a china shop. That's Rehoboam in a nutshell. The kingdom split in two. You had the northern kingdom, Israel, which was basically the rebellious teenager of the two. Then there was the southern kingdom, Judah, trying to keep things kosher, with the first temple still standing strong in Jerusalem. But with this division came weakness. Like a fragile Jenga tower, the once united kingdom was now vulnerable. And boy, did their neighbors note it. Imagine trying to enjoy a peaceful barbecue with your family while your neighbors keep throwing trash over the fence and blasting death metal at all hours. That was life for the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Surrounded by empires with bigger armies and worse attitudes, they were like the awkward kid at a middle school dance, just hoping not to get picked on. Internal squabbles, power struggles, and the occasional bad king who thought sacrificing to other gods was a brilliant idea. They had it all. It's like a soap opera written by someone who really, really loves historical drama and bad puns. Speaking of bad neighbors, let's talk about the Assyrians. Now, these guys were the schoolyard bullies of the ancient world. They were notorious for their brutality, their love of a good sacking, and their surprisingly sophisticated postal system, but don't let that fool you. In 722 BCE, the Assyrians decided to add conquering the northern kingdom of Israel to their to-do list. They swept through the land like a bad case of food poisoning, scattering the Israelites, who became known as the 10 Lost Tribes. It's like that time you lost your car keys, but on a much larger, more historically significant scale. The southern kingdom of Judah, however, managed to hang on, but they were living on borrowed time. Now, you'd think that seeing your sibling get pummeled by the schoolyard bully would teach you a lesson, right? Well, Judah missed the memo. They continued their internal squabbles, made some questionable alliances, and generally acted like they were immune to the Assyrian threat. It's a classic case of we'll worry about it later syndrome, and spoiler alert, it didn't end well. Judah was like that friend who keeps dating terrible people. Convinced that this time will be different, they allied themselves with Egypt, flirted with rebellion against Assyria, and generally made a series of choices that could only be described as questionable at best. It's like watching a historical train wreck in slow motion. Section 4. The walls come crashing down, Nebuchadnezzar's not-so-fine china shop moment. Fast forward a century or so, and the Assyrian Empire, much like your last diet plan, crumbled. But don't celebrate just yet. A new kid was on the block, ready to make his mark on history, Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylonia. Now, this guy was ambitious, to put it mildly. He was like a Babylonian version of Genghis Khan, but with a better PR team. Nebuchadnezzar set his sights on Judah. He laid siege to Jerusalem, and after a 2-year standoff that would make a staring contest between toddlers look like a blink and you'll miss it affair, the city fell. In 587 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar's forces stormed Jerusalem. It wasn't pretty. They looted the city, burned the first temple to the ground, and took the Israelites as prisoners back to Babylon. Imagine your house getting ransacked by a bunch of rowdy teenagers, except instead of stealing your dad's vintage vinyl collection, they're making off with sacred artifacts and national treasures. The destruction of the first temple was a tragedy of epic proportions for the Jewish people. It was like losing their home, their history, and their spiritual center all at once. The walls that had stood for centuries, the altar where countless sacrifices had been made, the Holy of Holies, the most sacred space in the temple, all gone. It's enough to make you want to reach for the comfort food and a good cry. The destruction of the first temple wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about the shattering of a people's sense of identity, security, and faith. Section 5, exile, packing up and heading out. So, there they were, the Israelites, carted off to Babylon, probably wondering if they could claim a moving allowance on their taxes. Exile is never fun. It's like a forced vacation, except you're not allowed to leave. The food is terrible, and your boss is a tyrannical king with a penchant for elaborate gardens. The Babylonians, in their defense, weren't all bad. They allowed the Israelites to maintain their cultural and religious practices, which is more than you can say for some conquerors. Still, being away from your homeland, your city, your temple, it's enough to make anyone a little bit homesick. Imagine being forced to move to a new city where the language is unfamiliar, the customs are strange, and the pizza just doesn't measure up. That was the reality for the exiled Israelites. They yearned for Jerusalem, for the temple, for the life they'd known. Their forced relocation to Babylon was a time of profound sadness and uncertainty, yet it was also a time of incredible resilience. Even in exile, they clung to their faith, their traditions, and their hope for a future back in their homeland. They prayed by the rivers of Babylon, sang songs of Zion, and kept the memory of the temple alive in their hearts. The destruction of the first temple may have been a devastating blow, but it didn't break their spirit. It's a testament to the enduring power of faith and the human ability to find hope even in the darkest of times. The impact or loss that still resonates. The destruction of the first temple was like a punch to the gut for the Jewish people. It was more than just losing a building. It was like their whole world had been turned upside down. Imagine your favorite gathering place. The spot where you celebrated, mourned, and connected with your community, suddenly gone. That's the kind of void the first temple's destruction left. It forced them to rethink their relationship with God, their understanding of their history, and their very identity as a people. No more animal sacrifices, no more grand pilgrimages to Jerusalem. It was a time of profound spiritual questioning and adaptation. The loss of the temple wasn't just a historical footnote, it echoed through generations, shaping Jewish practices, prayers, and perspectives. It's a loss that still resonates today, marked by a day of mourning and reflection. Tisha B'Av. You know how some things stick with you, like that time you accidentally called your teacher mom, or that embarrassing phase where you were really into wearing Crocs in public. The destruction of the first temple, yeah, that's one of those things that sticks with you. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. The story of the first temple might have ended in flames, but from the ashes, something new emerged. But wait, there's more. The rise of synagogues. With the temple gone, the Jewish people had to find new ways to connect with their faith. Enter the synagogue. Think of it as the first temple's cooler, more adaptable little sibling. Synagogues weren't about animal sacrifices or fancy rituals. They were about community, prayer, and learning. It was like the shift from grand opera to intimate jazz clubs. Synagogues became the new hubs for Jewish life, popping up in towns and cities wherever Jewish communities found themselves. They were places for prayer, study, debate, and probably the occasional gossip session after services. Let's be real, even ancient civilizations weren't immune to a little juicy gossip. Synagogues weren't just a replacement for the temple, they were a whole new way of experiencing faith. They were more accessible, more focused on personal connection and study, and less dependent on a central location or elaborate rituals. It was like the difference between watching a blockbuster movie in a crowded theater and having a movie night with friends. The rise of the synagogue was a game changer for Judaism. It made faith more personal, more portable, and more resilient. It allowed Jewish communities to thrive even in the diaspora, scattered across the globe. Keeping the faith alive one story at a time. Without the temple as a physical reminder of their history, the Jewish people turned to something just as powerful: storytelling. They kept the memory of the first temple alive through tales, songs, and traditions passed down through generations. Imagine grandparents telling their grandkids bedtime stories about the glory days of the first temple, probably embellishing a bit here and there. Who can blame them? These stories weren't just bedtime tales, they were a way of keeping their history, their identity, and their hope alive. They reminded them of where they came from, what they had lost, and what they hoped to rebuild one day. It's like that cherished family recipe passed down through generations, each bite a reminder of home and heritage. These stories kept the spirit of the first temple alive, even though the physical structure was long gone. They served as a reminder of their ancestors' covenant with God, their resilience in the face of adversity, and their unwavering belief in a brighter future. The destruction of the first temple may have been a tragedy, but it also sparked a remarkable act of cultural preservation. A legacy of resilience and hope. The story of the first temple isn't just ancient history. It's a story that still resonates today. It's a story about faith, loss, resilience, and the enduring power of hope. It reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable tragedy, even when everything seems lost, the human spirit has an uncanny ability to adapt, rebuild, and find meaning. The Jewish people could have easily given up. Their faith shattered along with the temple walls, but they didn't. They found new ways to connect with their faith, preserve their traditions, and keep their hope alive. They turned tragedy into triumph, using the experience to forge an even stronger sense of identity and community. The first temple may be gone, but its legacy lives on, a testament to the enduring power of faith, the importance of community, and the unbreakable spirit of the Jewish people. So the next time you're feeling down, remember the story of the first temple. Remember that even when things seem their bleakest, even when the world throws its worst at you, there's always hope. There's always a reason to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep moving forward. Because if the Jewish people could find hope after the destruction of their most sacred site, then surely we can find the strength to face whatever challenges life throws our way.